As I actually told last night when we were going through some of the data sets that you guys have offered, and I would highly recommend all the shippers in the room, please have a discussion with you. It was amazing to see that kind of data sets and the amount of data that's generated by shipping around the world. It was like a virtual highway. How you track your planes when you're looking for your flight. You could literally see ships all over the world. The nomination time and the vessel waiting periods and the cargo that it was carrying. So yeah, I definitely recommend that you have a discussion with the shippers. Yeah, thanks. I'm going to also give you guys a little story, a 4-minute story. Of a company called Koya, who's been at the helm of this Project Blue conference since last year, and then we were again proud to be associated with Project Blue. But last night in our networking session, language sometimes is not your best friend. To a foreign delegation asking you, what is Koya? What do you guys do at Koya? And I tried to explain to them, as I earlier said, there is many moving parts in the whole logistics value chain. From port to vessel, you now took me one step further. How you jump on the vessel, you can move it to its destination. So I'm just going to give us watch a few minutes video for Koya, and I think everyone then will know what Koya does from a logistics service provider perspective, and also from a partner in logistics for the mining houses of South Africa. So let's just take it through to the video.
Welcome to the Makoya Group of Companies. We are proud to be a Black-owned and Black-managed South African organization specializing in strategic investment opportunities within the country's mining sector. This video will go over safety and operations for one of the group companies, Makoya Supply Chain Holdings, dedicated to excellence, innovation, and integrity. Our operational footprint runs throughout Southern Africa, bringing pit-to-vessel and innovative routes to market for the bulk of South Africa's mining industry. Makoya Supply Chain Holdings plays a crucial role in the road to rail migration. Every day, we load bulk commodities such as coal, chrome, limestone, and various beneficiated and non-beneficiated ores. These are sourced from local mines and suppliers and delivered by our transport partners. Product is transported by rail directly to key port terminals and power generation terminals in Southern Africa from all of Makoya's rail hubs, leveraging advanced equipment such as front-end loaders. Our dedicated locomotives and our rail logistics partners' infrastructure, we ensure efficient handling and maximum volume throughput daily. Our Blinkpad Rail Terminal is proud to be the coal sector's first multi-user terminal, serving as a centralized hub for coal from various major producers and junior miners, ensuring efficient onward rail transportation. Our Highveld Private Rail Terminal serves as an inland multimodal terminal which services multiple commodity flows. At Makoya, the safety, health, environment, and wellness of our employees, contractors, and visitors are our highest priorities. We aim for an incident-free workplace by continuously promoting safe practices and providing clear guidelines. Everyone on site shares responsibility. Safety begins with you and extends to those around you. Our name, Makoya, stands for authenticity, the real thing. This reflects our core mission, delivering genuine, practical solutions to the diverse challenges our clients face. Guided by principles of integrity, innovation, and teamwork, we continuously turn bold ideas into tangible outcomes and sustainable products. At Makoya, honesty, perseverance, and long-term profitability form the bedrock of everything we do. The Makoya Group comprises of specialized subsidiaries, each playing a strategic role within our business framework. Makoya strictly adheres to all South African labor laws, ensuring a fair and supportive working environment. Since 2008, Makoya has been the preferred loading service provider for state-owned enterprises and the mining industry. Our contributions have been pivotal in upholding the government's road to rail migration strategy. Our partnership history underscores our commitment to
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we are fastly turning into the most anticipated panel discussion of the year in the ferroalloys market. Is upon us. Last year, we had a full house, and this discussion is critical to this room. All the industry players from Project Blue here. Before we get into that discussion, I just want to add a few words. As we gather here today, at a time where the logistics and the rail sectors in the Southern Africa region are undergoing a profound shift. The recent rollout, obviously, of the third-party rail access, it marks a turning point for South Africa and our freight landscape. One of the main issues that we were having in the freight landscape was that we were compounded to one operator. And I think the fact that the government has now allowed multiple rail operators, the train operating companies to come in, it then creates more throughput into ports. So you as end users will be able to get into ports. At the same time, the Southern African Development Community, the region stands at exciting crossroads, preparing for a surge in rail volumes. From the mineral rich belts of Limpopo and Mpumalanga to the export corridors of Maputo and Richards Bay. The ferroalloys industry is deeply reliant on the performance of our rail and port networks. The choices we make today on infrastructure, on partnerships and policy shifts will shape the competitiveness of our industry for the years to come. And this must be our call to action. We must move beyond the fragmented efforts and embrace a collaborative corridor-level approach to logistics, industry leaders, government stakeholders, and operators such as Macquarie. We must work together to unlock investment, improve integration, and also to ensure that our bundles reach the global markets. On the success of initiatives like the Macquarie High-Caliber Rail Terminal, which has successfully evacuated in excess of 1.4 million tons of chrome and ferrochrome from the Rustenburg corridor, it proves that when we align around the shared vision, we can overcome even the most entrenched logistical challenges. So let's use this appealing to the conference, let's use this conference not only to reflect but to commit to bold partnerships and smarter infrastructure, and obviously a logistics system that drives growth across the region. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to introduce our panel discussion and our panel speakers. For today's discussion, we will have a Q&A with the panel discussion, and I will be taking only 3 questions from the audience in the interest of time. So we've got a good discussion here, and we will take 3 questions to the behalf of the audience. Great. First up, I'm going to start with the ladies. I'm going to introduce, and I'm doing the introduction one time so that we get straight into the Q&As, because I'm sure there's other people are here to hear. So let's just help me to welcome Ms. Malisa Wandi. Malisa Wandi is the General Manager of Transnet for the MMC, which is the Mineral Mining and Chrome BU at Transnet Freight Rail. She is overseeing strategic freight operations across the key mineral corridors. Many of us in the room know Malisa and work with her closely with over 25 years of experience in logistics, risk, and environmental. Malisa has played a pivotal role in driving performance improvements in chrome and ferrochrome flows, and is a strong advocate for corridor-level collaboration and rail revitalization. Let's welcome Malisa to the panel. Welcome, Malisa. Next up, we've got my friends, I always call them my friends from Mozambique. Earlier on, we were talking of Transnet, and we were talking of Maputo Port, and we were talking of Maputo Railways. So we've got basically the custodians of this flows on this panel discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Melinda Zirinda. Melinda is the Commercial Director at CFM, which is the Mozambican Railways. She has served there since 2014, which is based in Maputo. She plays a key role in shaping the commercial strategy and the regional partnerships for Mozambique's national rail operator. Her leadership supports CFM's efforts to modernize infrastructure, expand freight capacity, and strengthen cross-border logistics, specifically in South Africa, and to facilitate movement of bulk commodities like the ferroalloys market. Welcome, Melinda. Chief Operating Officer of Mfutu Port Development Company, which we all know as MPDC, with a background in mechanical engineering and logistics. She has led operations across multiple sectors at MPDC, and she plays a key role in optimizing the port performance, coordinating with regional rail operators, and driving infrastructure upgrades. Welcome, Mark. And as with any real panel discussion, won't be a real panel discussion if you don't have someone from our government to come and also give comfort to the industry. Ladies and gentlemen, my next panelist is Mr. Sean Moses from the Department of Trade Industry. Sean is a certified economic developer with more than 20 years experience in the public sector, including senior leadership role. He's currently the director in the Regional Industrial Development at South Africa Department of Trade and Industry. Welcome, Sean. Today I'm going to have a seat next to you. All right. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for taking the time and the opportunity to come and have this important discussion with us. I'm going to start off straight into the questions. Let me start at home. Let me start with the Minister of Transport. There's been the market trends. Everybody's been talking about ferrochrome, the smelters shutting down, and so on and so on. Other see opportunity, and we're going to be controversial when we talk about these matters because it's what drives our economy, actually. Okay. And they say, with the ferrochrome sector embracing energy efficient technologies and rail logistics at a cost-solving measure, how is TFR aligning with the chrome and ferrochrome strategy to support the industrial revival in products while meeting sustainability targets from the transit sector?
All right. Thank you very much, Kenneth. Good afternoon to the delegates and obviously my fellow panelists here. How we come as transit? Number one, I think it is not going down well that we see the shrinkage of ferrochrome in the country, because in the past we stood a chance to then transport chrome ore from the mines to the smelters, and then in addition to that, the ferrochrome from the smelters for exports. Now we see that shrinkage in that space, and that has resulted in more chrome ore being exported. So from a Transnet point of view, this dovetails nicely with the journey on. As you all understand, I think earlier on, there was a strong statement made to say Transnet must occupy its space. Indeed, Transnet started the journey about 24 months ago, that we call the recovery journey, to then say how do we best assist or facilitate or be catalysts of economic growth in the country, targeting the main commodities, of course, chrome, ferrochrome being one of those. Because we understand that for those industries to grow, we've got to be there to support them, and most importantly, minimize the cost of doing business. Now for us, that means that we need to make sure that most of the chrome ore that ends up in the port and the little bit of ferrochrome that is still going out there for exports reaches the port and benefits the industry in terms of the economies of scale, and then benefit the SA economy in terms of getting there in a more sustainable manner, less emissions. Typical example, one chrome train of say 75 wagons is equivalent to 130 plus trucks. So you can imagine if you then say remove 130 trucks on the road and then run one train, a train that runs on a network of its own, far away from cities, not congesting any borders, not damaging any roads, but getting to the ports. So ours is to then make sure that we come in with cost-effective value propositions to industry, and given the economies of scale that the industry gets on trains, then also bring that on board. And I think we've seen the outcome of that. You know, at the time when Transnet was down and delivering 149 million tons per year, we then moved to 151 million tons. Last year we delivered 160 million tons. This year we're going for 180 million tons. That talks to the need that we see as Transnet to support the growth in the country for the industries to export cost effectively.
Thanks, it's great to see that there's a word, there's a Transnet lingo, there's a recovery plan in play. And everybody is in this plan. It's not just Transnet, the country, the chrome producers, the ferroalloys, manganese producers, we're all in this recovery plan together to build this economy of scale. Melissa, you know, given the push for rail over roads, obviously reduce emissions and congestion at the ports and so on, there's a reason we're sitting in this corridor. What do corridor level partnerships entail? And the intermodal hubs, what focus are we having in terms of the corridor level partnerships on chrome and ferrochrome, specifically with our colleagues from the bordering states?
All right. To start with, now that we are operating in the era of rail reform, in the past we would have assumed that if any customer wants to rail from South Africa anyway, they would rail, through transit. That is changing. So, as part of the partners that I see in the value chain, one is the customer, where I have to make sure that indeed the customer is committing to enter into this partnership with Transnet, because they have an option going forward. But in addition to that, the partnership that we have in the value chain goes a long way, because with customers coming on board, giving us that demand and the mandate to execute on their behalf, then it requires that the loading at the customer side is efficient. And I must say that that is an area for improvement in this country. 12 hours loading a 75-level train is a bit inefficient. But of course, the contracts allow customers to use. It's an area for improvement. Then moving on the rail side, we are beefing up capacity. As we are beefing up capacity, it becomes important that we keep the dual port system that we have. To Maputo, we liaise with all the parties involved, up until CFM, the railways in Maputo, CFM in the form of the ports in Maputo, but then also towards the Richards Bay, port. But what has become very clear is that with the challenges that we're encountering in the country right now, theft, vandalism, and all of that, it requires that we start thinking differently. And for us, it then brings in the whole issue of consolidation hubs. To then say, yes, it's well and good to strategize and partner with the relevant parties and making sure that across the border there's seamless operations, less delays and all of that, and I'll leave the rest for the colleagues to cover. But also within the SA logistics chain, from the pit to the vessel, we are ready. We talk about a tactical volume planning process that we are embedding in Transnet, which talks to understanding the customer demand and planning with the customer a quarter in advance, so that as we then agree on the monthly demand, the weekly demand, the actual execution on a day-to-day, you are running to a stockpile that has capacity to receive the product, and there's a plan to load a vessel because it's been nominated and it's coming on a particular day, so that then the conveyor belt continues to run. So that is part of what we are dealing with. Now, the critical aspect that I wanted to bring on board, having seen the Magoya video a few minutes ago, typical example of what now we really have to think about. With the growth that we see, our customers, I must say, thanks if they are in the room, we really thank them for the confidence, that they are giving us as Transnet, even in the rail reform. And as Transnet is very much committed to meet them and make sure that indeed, we don't let them down. Now, what is happening is that there is serious growth. Even with the trains that we're planning today, the number of trains we're planning, still not enough to cover the demand that is there. Which then means two things. The little that we're planning, some of those trains can't reach the destinations because of the vandalism and theft and loot. And this is unique to certain hotspots. On the western limb, for an example, which is where this is rampant, Rustenburg down to the coal line, if you talk about Pretoria, Central Rand area, trains are hardly moving in those areas. Now, question is, yes, for business continuity purposes, if then your mind is north of those hotspots, you have an option. We are engaging with customers to then say, let's find consolidation hubs, south of the hotspots, so that at least you are guaranteed that your product will reach the port and you meet your vessel commitments. Either way. Anyway, if then the theft subsides, there's still enough demand. And the loading points at some mines, we've seen this mostly in other sectors more than chrome, but I suspect that as we improve performance in the chrome, ferrochrome space, we are going to see that. There are other commodities where we find that in a week they can't take on the supplies that we are giving them. So in a way, it means they've got limited loading capacity. Now with a hub, somewhere in the middle, such as Magoya and many others, by the way, then you have an opportunity, to then deal with Transnet directly as they come to your mine, load at your siding, but also you have an opportunity to transport that product to a consolidation point so that in the event of anything going wrong and Transnet can't get to your siding, at least you can still move your product. We've seen that in the event of incidents such as derailments, lines being blocked out, and because you've got an option, you still continue to load for you. But at the same time, if you grow, you can run both. Thank you.
Thanks for this interesting times ahead. You covered some of my following question, Lisa. We've seen an uptick in the volumes in home ferroalloys volumes through Maputo, Richards Bay, and respectively. But it still seems to be a downward performance within the one for the last to Tabazilli, let's call it that. And we know it's due to this disease that we have in this country, and as you mentioned. Are there any additional security measures that most of the house here today, a lot of them have their mines in that region, in Rustenburg corridor? Is there any additional security measures being put into place so that we can kind of see an ease up of the table that the trains start flowing again and the line can become densified again?
All right, I did mention a few minutes ago that we're on a recovery path. We've now reached a stage where we are reinventing ourselves for growth because we realize that we've got to grow in order to enable the industry. So yes, we are challenged on the Western Limb. Of about 20 billion tons of coal that was exported last year, only 5 billion tons was linked to the port. And that for us is a challenge that we would like to increase that, and therefore overcoming the challenges of theft and vandalism on the Western Limb are a must-be addressed kind of things. What are we doing about that? Number one, we have a security strategy that we've always had as a company, which talks to, one, replacing copper-containing components with less attractive, components. That is underway. But then we realized that if you talk overheads, for example, even in instances where we've replaced copper with tiger wire, then at times they still cut the tiger wire and leave it hanging. And that begins to say to you, this is not that, it is something else. Then we've gone as far as also identifying critical infrastructure, infrastructure in there, such as your substations, your relay rooms, make sure that we're protecting in a way that makes it more difficult for criminals to access it. And then, of course, the surveillance that is happening and the deployment of technologies. Now, with the deployment of technologies, what seems to be more effective for us is where you have technologies installed on the infrastructure, overheads to tell you exactly where they are interfering, then you can respond immediately. Also, there's distributed acoustic systems where through the Internet of Things, we actually can detect movement that is unusual in the area, and that releases a sound to the CDC. So we are looking at a combination of factors, but the game changer for for the Western Ring is going to be the security service provider. Because in the country there is a risk of theft and vandalism across the board. But in this particular area, we were losing the data. So the question is, what is it that has not happened? We had a service provider, but it was theft left, right, and center. So what we started doing is to hold them accountable. And then eventually there was consequence management. We've reached a point where a new service provider is on board when we are fixing the arrangements. And we've made sure that the penalty system is quite stringent. You know, if the service provider does not deliver, they must feel the pain in their pockets. So that's some of the things that we are doing. But besides that, I must say, you want to leave this, but I'm going to say it anyway. One of the security and vandalism risk mitigation strategies, it is to collaborate with trucks. And I'm saying this, collaboration with trucks, to make sure that trucks find a way to play in space without stopping trains. I hope we are together. So it is important that we define the area where trucks should play, which is indeed the short hauls to consolidation hubs. Then allow the trains to load from consolidation hubs to the ports. So for me, that is a critical risk mitigation strategy. So that everyone understands there is enough for all. You don't have to interfere or anything, you know, with one mode of transport in order to benefit. It is part of that.
Thank you, Minister. Yeah, good to see that the state has, you know, proper strategies in place, and for now there will be theories, but the message is loud and clear. In which space do we play? Trucking plays just as important role in the economy as rail, but where do we play in trucking? Trucking should be the first line, in my opinion. It's opinionated. We should be trucking into a rail siding or to a beneficiation plant, or not into the N3s and N2s and Mongols of this world. Okay? But that only works if rail works. So let's fix rail. Alright, just as we have these seamless trains that run from South Africa into Mozambique, we'll move over to from Transnet South African Railways into CFM Railways. Amaleta, welcome again, and I'm just going to give you straight question with regards to your upgrade program. We know that it's been published that there's 145 million euro upgrade, you know, of Maputo, specifically the San Blasio line, and aiming to triple the freight that you want to push through that corridor. So considering that there's a rail upgrade set to boost capacity to probably around 44 million tons to CFM, how is CFM positioning itself to attract more mineral exports in South Africa, particularly chrome and ferroalloys? How are you positioning yourself?
Thank you, and good afternoon, the participants. On the civil side, has already mentioned, we're in between the region where is the cargo is taken by Telfa up to the port. So for sure, we have to guarantee that everything is run smoothly. Everything that is offered is running efficiently. With that said, that will impact on the cost for the whole logistics. The duplication of the South line is the one of the strategy to make the corridor more efficient, reducing the transit time, the turnaround time. As a result of that, we have done the phase one, which would have 42 kilometers. We finished last year. This year is all about to resume on rehabilitation of the other 26 kilometers, which will also include some bridge, signal innovation. We are also on innovating the system, integrating with Telfa and the port. Big Mala will talk more about that, but we are doing that together. That in order to give more efficiency on the corridor, reducing the time customers, documentation, everything will be less and less time. So the corridor will be more efficient with that.
No, that's really good. I think couldn't have come at a better time as with the third party access, to increase the volume of commodity that's moved into Mozambique. There's been a large number of slots that's been allocated at third party access. So we're hoping that your line is ready by the time the third party train operators come into play. A follow-up question, as Mozambique strengthens its role in creating a logistic hub for the Sahel region, what commercial models or incentives is CFM exploring to deepen the collaboration with the likes of South African exporters and logistics operators such as the Gulf?
Okay, commercial, we think that if you're going to look the cost in terms of the rates, even if you reduce $1 or R1, we have seen that it is not really efficient or has not given the real impact compared to put the infrastructure in such condition that the customer will get benefit by running through quick. In short time can have the stockpile enough, can load the vessel. So if you look the logistic channel will be more efficient and less costly. So that is linked and is responding commercial by intervening on the infrastructure. It's not only the rail infrastructure, we are also looking at the rolling stock and also system organization, which will then all those parts will impact on the good service. So with that, we believe that we attract more, we'll be able to run through, there is a challenge on the road. We are not saying that the road can't run, but in terms of infrastructure and congestion, there are still some window that the rail must bring the cap which are original from the rail. That has been a challenge for us in order to reduce. Now we are running into the port of Project Ferroalloys. What we run in terms of on the rail side is 25% compared to 75%. We have been tasked for the government to change that. The 75 must be on the rail, and the complementar will be at 25. With that, we also see that the corridor will run more smoothly.
Thanks, Amelinda. It's really heartwarming to see that both governments from South Africa and Mozambique are taking this critical number very seriously. I mean, the 25-75 split is unheard of. We need to reverse that and put that onto rail. Last night we heard, from a South African perspective, we heard from the Honorable Deputy Minister that there's currently being presented a critical mineral strategy document that will come out. I found it so intriguing yesterday that he disclosed that, the President disclosed that at the G20 summit, and he brought it out, and hopefully Niels and the team will be part of that discussion as discussed last night. And we want to have a look at this document. We want to take this document back to Transnet, to Mandisa and Marla, to say, with the likes of the GCIC, to say, how do we help now government structure this from a service provider point of view, from an industry point of view? All right, I'm going to move over to Marla. Marla, the recent publications we've been following and watching closely from obviously different financial aspects, but we know that the Port of Maputo PDC is currently undergoing $164 million expansion to double container capacity and improve bulk shipping, particularly with a focus on mineral exports. Marla, since the Port of Maputo's expansion is set to handle larger vessels and increase throughput, how will these upgrades specifically benefit the ferroalloy sector, and what efficiencies can exporters expect in terms of turnaround and cost?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Kenny. The concession of the board has been expanded to 2,258, and that was, I guess, a very considerable investment, and of course, container terminal that's going to be double, of course. And when you talk about bulk minerals, it's more on the coal side, where we're gonna grow from the current 8 million tons to 12, and then 14, and then very much future years up to 60 to 80. So always this question come up for what is there for chrome and ferrochrome. Our footprint, as you all know, due to our vicinity, location of the port to the city, there is not much land to grow. So in terms of expansion itself, in terms of land, there is not much to do. So our focus in the last years has been on efficiency. And when we talk about efficiency, of course, we can buy as much as equipment as we can train people, and it's important, it's strategic. But our learning since the COVID times, and we took the lesson, has been on logistics. And systems, transformation, digitalization, and cooperation with very strategic stakeholders has proven very fruitful solution. So our focus has been more on efficiency, let's say on the inside and water side, guaranteeing that when we receive cargo, we treat that cargo as fast as possible, we segregate them to mitigate any cross-contamination with someone, cargo transfer, vessel loading, and also mitigating any congestion. I think statistics has shown that the port of Maputo is less congested, where we have average between 2 days maximum waiting time at the port. So the bottlenecks that we've been seeing is logistics on rail and road. And the role of MPDC is far from just a marine service provider, port operations, but is going beyond and even putting our footprint in the corridor. So we started with SME, not started with possession, we started with all the system integration and facilitated of the TAP process, for example, at the border, but we also expanded to the rail, where we have digital integration with various stakeholders, where information is powerful. And with having our house exposed, no one wants to see inefficiencies shown like that. So we all strive to improve and so on. So we're going beyond that, engaging very good partnership with the corridor, efficiencies on the road and on the rail. As you said, we can't have just one, we have to complement the other. And very good news we've seen and witnesses with number of trucks focus mostly on the safety. When we look at the same park station area where we anticipated most of the process that has been done in the port, and then we can clear trucks far before and make sure that the truck arrives at the port is just smooth moving. Stakeholders on the boot side, on the corridor, like Kadumba, clearing agents, customs, truck construction and road maintenance, as well for the net, all of those stakeholders have very aggressive plans. I think transporters as our partners, they also witnesses that they actually get feeling, and ultimately the clients are also benefiting with cost reduction coming from the reduction of turnaround time of the truck movement and crossing at the border. There's still work to be done, but with the recent extension about to come on the extension of the kilometer 4 GTSA as well as truck, where there is some aggressive plans for the drive-through scanner, flyover board, which the current movement of the trucks that we say is sitting average at 1 hour, 1.5 hours, is going to be like 15 minutes, and that would, of course, make a room for further cost reduction and efficiency in the corridor.
Brilliant. The key word that I hear with MPDC is efficiency. You have a bit of a challenge being a space constraint, but how do you solve it and solve it with efficiency? Given that MPDC's throughput into your ports, the other side of the road, but on rails, it's closely tied to the performance of Transnet, and CFM as well. What collaborative frameworks or joint initiatives are currently in place to ensure that the ferroalloy consignments that arrive at your ports arrive on time, one, and in full, two. How are these partnerships evolving, and to support reliability and volume growth?
Can you really mention that the ratio between rain and road now is at average 25-75 is true for crop per crop. But our dream is to reach that. I won't say the other way around. We can't reach that goal, realistic. But we have to recognize that we've seen the growth and increase in improvements. From the years ago working in the BDC, I used to see 400,000 tons of rain, 900 million, 1.2, 1.5. Last year we did like 3 million just of rain. Of course, phosphate a little bit, but the biggest portion being from fertile. So we must recognize that. And attribute of that will go to the current action that has to be ongoing. But the system integration, I think, was key for the recent improvements that we've noticed. Between CFM and NPDC, we're fully integrated. We can see the life of the train once a train reaches kilometer 4. The automatic world. And we know the staging time, the waiting time, the dwell time, we see the transit time, and we can monitor in real time the dwell time for empties and fulls and processing at the time, and we're back to automatic world. So with that, we've noticed already the turnaround time of the train reduced by more than 50%, which is also showing up as the volume increase. We are in very deep discussions and about to be materialized with also Transnet to come into the party, and then we can have, let's say, almost pit-to-pit visibility of the trains. So the benefit is already being felt, and we aim for better increase on that. Service design is something that is key, it's a formula. It's something that is is in progress, also under discussion, and based on that, we hope that we can also sign the service level agreement penalty, like a lot, but it gives some fire to the agreements that we give. And of course, clients will also need to be part of this. As Melissa said, the siding sometimes doesn't have, the Transnet will not have the full control of this. So the clients also important to be part of the game and signing take-or-pay agreements and SLAs with penalties, so we can also monitor efficiency in every one kingdom if we get that.
Next, I'm just going to move over to Sean from the DTIC. Sean, welcome, and thank you for giving me the time to allow this opportunity to defend the discussion today. Sean, the DTIC has made significant strides in establishing SEZs in economic zones as engines of industrialization, put it that way, and to lead exports out of the country. Case in point, the SEZ in Zanin, setting the benchmark for speed and collaboration. How can the ferroalloys industry tap into the SEZ framework to unlock investments, improve infrastructure, and enhance its global competitiveness, specifically in regions like Limpopo, Mpumalanga, where the mineral resources is concentrated?
Good afternoon to the participants, and thanks Kenneth for this opportunity. Maybe just as a disclaimer before I start, I know DTIC carries a lot of weight, so I'm sitting within a division within the DTIC focusing on spatial integration, hence why my expertise lies in the development of special economic zones. So my answers will be a bit different from my fellow panelists, but I do think obviously with these statements it plays an important part in what we attempt to develop. So let me start off. The DTIC is focusing on a new industrial policy areas, which is diversification, digitization, and decarbonization. So with that said, the point of interest for us is obviously maximizing the opportunities of beneficiation of these minerals. And to that extent, the SEZ program being in its 20th year of development, we currently now looking at diversifying the sectors that are located within these SEZs. So, coming into mineral beneficiation, as you rightfully said, we've set up SEZs in Limpopo. We have one in Mpumalanga, close to the Martinwood area. We have SEZs that's located in Richards Bay and Saldanha. So the reason why I'm touching these SEZs is they were set up with a clear defined purpose in terms of setting up a platform whereby industries that's producing raw minerals can utilize those platforms in terms of beneficiarity. Also, a case in point, and I think in the house there's two SEZs, it's Musina Mercado and Namakwa SEZ. So if I take Namakwa SEZ as an example, it was set up for the beneficiation of your zinc aspects as well. So we see that through the modification of the SEZ policy, it can provide opportunities for cost efficiency for investors that would like to set up those beneficiation facilities. So the offering there could be, obviously we spoke about efficiencies, but also to have embedded power generation platforms. I think one of the key advantages for the SEZ program is specifically on the element of establishing your custom control areas. So what that would have as benefit for potential producers is that with your raw product being input into the SEZ, right, it comes at a zero tax base into the SEZ, and you can also have compounded tax incentives, which allows them for specified incentives for these producers as well. So I think that's a critical element, and another test case, I think you mentioned it earlier, is also when we focus on establishing the trial implement of SEZ, we use that as a catalyst into develop the modalities around a rail corridor that's stretching from Johannesburg up to Port Elizabeth as well. So I'm just showcasing that in terms of the sector, in terms of the industry, if there is consensus and collaboration, that we definitely are open for public-private partnerships to assist the sector in developing opportunities.
Really, very loud and clear. Thanks, Sean, and I hope the house as well. Sean, if you look at the Mpoya High Power example, that it has demonstrated the value private-public collaboration by successfully evacuating, as I mentioned earlier, 1.4 million tons of ferroalloys from the Rustenburg corridor in Zone. As Mpoya and other stakeholders in the room probably look to scale similar models, how can we collaborate with the DTIC to structure SEZs, and that obviously SEZs that actually support integrated rail logistics hubs like Mpoya?
No, so as I said, the SEZ policy actually allows for public-private partnerships as well, so that is embedded in the SEZ Act. It's, I must say, one of the most underutilized aspects within the Act as well, so we haven't had that private sector appetite to really look at what opportunities we can extract in helping private sector do the logistics as well, because I think private sector in itself plays an important role. We heard earlier on from some of the presenters, especially on digitization, looking at the efficiencies that they can bring into processing systems that can enable transmodal freight transport and the likes as well. So, secondarily to that, as I mentioned, also we're looking at fostering cross-border collaboration. I mentioned to you earlier, coincidentally, we have a team down in Maputo negotiating with the government, especially on how the cross-border and cross-nodal opportunities can coexist, specifically on Maputo corridors. And we also now strongly expanding on opportunities, linking Namibia, linking Angola, building those trade corridors. So private sector definitely plays a key factor. I think it's one of the key elements that's missing in South Africa, because even today, if I listen to the industry, companies like yourself, you know, it's those companies that can pick up these opportunities that will enable the country, obviously, to increase the manufacturing opportunities, increase the product bulk that can go into the value chains as well. And I think now is the time that we should look at grasping the opportunities that at hand. I mean, we always look outward for opportunities, but just specifically on the automotive sector. And I want to touch very strongly on that. We know we have a lot of Chinese manufacturers that's coming into the country, obviously looking at introducing hybrid vehicles into the South African market. But if you ask how many EV battery manufacturers is present in the country, you will get zero answer to that as well. So that's an opportunity that is presenting itself. I'm sure the industry will know next year there's a new tax incentive that's being introduced. It's a 150% rebate for companies looking at EV battery manufacturing. So that combined with dedicated incentives, also combined with provinces and municipalities where there's appetite, specifically on beneficiation of certain industries, will is yours.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah, I think if there's any questions, we can put it up now. There's been a lot of questions from the audience. Yeah, what we're hearing is that, you know, there's definitely amongst this kind of discussion, from the DPIC perspective as well, there is a feeling of collaboration. You know, it ties into our bilateral trade agreements with Mozambique. You know, next year hopefully we would like to get GPT onto this kind of discussion as well. Them to give us a review on the South African reports, you know. But Mandisa mentioned earlier a critical stance. It is scary, yes. We've got 20-odd million tons that was exported out of this country. 5.2 million can put on rail. And you know, ties into the 25-75 split that happens in Maputo. And it's time that we have this radical change, that we move more volume onto rail. And it's a safer mode of transport, it's more cost effective as well in most cases. I've got a question, we've got two questions. Rail rates per ton cost is higher than road per ton. All the benefits of rail are clear, but how can the competitive commercial cost or efficiency come back to support the industry and recovery plans? I'll ask Marisa and Ronald to touch base 2-minute response to the question.
Thanks, yeah, for that question. I think just a bit of specifics for context. Right now, you know, to support the coal ferroalloy industry, Transnet has invested heavily on the steel line to make sure that it's no longer a branch line, but it's moving towards the Edmonton Sound. Now, that is a cost to Transnet. And then obviously, for every money we spend, okay, we've got to find a way to recover it. Now, when we look at the cost of railing, you get the total cost of logistics. When you compare it with road, and in there you're not adding the impact of road on the infrastructure, you're not adding the impact of road on growth, on you know, safety of the citizens, the impact of road at the border, then you must understand that you're comparing a full cost of running rail versus the subsidized cost of road. So with road, there are a lot of externalities that are not accounted for. However, as Transnet, we don't like the picture we see. We'd like to see rail-friendly goods coming back to rail. And therefore, as we then drive efficiencies, we believe that this picture will change. Right now, with all the disruptions I was talking to earlier, we spend billions in security. Now, if there wasn't vandalism and the theft that we are dealing with today, I tell you the cost to serve would be much less. But because of this vandalism and theft and everything, the costs are escalating. So we really need to continue. We are focusing on the cost elements from a Transnet point of view, but some of them, you know, are external factors. And unfortunately, we do not get any subsidy to build the network at this stage, nor to even buy locomotives. So, but you know, we're working on it. It's got to change. You know, at the end of the day, there is no serious comparison. Secondly, I think the last point I would make on this one is that we have seen trucking companies cutting, you know, costs to the bone, but they did not last. Here we're talking about sustainable, okay, value propositions. We need to plan to go long haul. It does not help to try and win cargo from rail at all costs, because it's going to be short-lived. But again, we're not lying down. We are driving those efficiencies, making sure that indeed we claim our space. Thank you.
On your side, I mean, is there any input to the railway per ton versus road cost per ton? You know, at the end of the day, it boils down to say kilometer on road versus railway per ton on your side. We've seen some reductions, obviously, on certain flows to save ends, but any input to the question?
Thank you. I think just that on what Melissa was referring, when we compare the costs, there are another component very important, which is time, which we also may consider on this comparison, because in terms of, as was mentioned, what you can bring once in a train comparing for trucks, a huge difference. So I think we have to consider that, but also on top to say yes, it's in our strategy. Hence, at the moment we're investing in order to run with more efficiency, in order to do longer trains. With that said, I believe that somehow will be a window to look at that. But for sure, looking at sustainability system or service, because what we really focus on is to give a quality service, which will then make the customer happy, the customer be able to get his product in very short time.
Thanks, Lisa. Moving on to the next question. I was excited when I saw fish there because I'm a big fisherman, you know. And the question is, how does the logistics supply chain look to be part of the green transition? Or are the other fish to fry for now too big? It's an interesting question. Actually, a very good question, because we spoke of innovation, we spoke of cost saving initiatives on this discussion, we also spoke of plans and strategies that both the ports and the rail has, both railways has to reduce emissions, reduce carbon footprint, you know. So in a logistics food chain or logistics value chain, there's obviously going to be a component of where a company wants to go in certain aspects, but it can only be done one little fish at a time, as they mentioned. Yeah, I think that's about it in terms of our questions. We don't have any other questions from the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being an extensive audience. To my panelists, thank you so much. You know, we're going to collaborate and set in stone right now. We need to grow this business, we need to grow the volumes, and we need to do it safely. And I think for me as a South African, it is extremely proud moment to always have government or part of the government, the federal state, to be involved in these kind of initiatives. And it shows that we want to grow this company, we want to grow this country, you know, and we want to grow both economies of whichever country we touch with this ferroalloys. So, ladies and gentlemen, can you give a round of applause to our we need to remind a little token of appreciation because you guys are so sweet. We got you some money. And I also ask if you can take a photo with the photographer. We take a photo before we leave.
Sweet because it's honey. Sweet. It's red, man. It's very red. It's red. The strawberry jam. You guys must disclose the jam.
Thank you guys.